What's up, YouTube, and welcome to Codename Scream. I am that horror guy, and if you have not done so already, please make sure to go ahead, like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications for all things horror. Welcome to another episode of With That Being Said. We're going back on track to how we did things when we first rolled this out, so we're going to discuss a film that involves Ghostface. There has not been any sort of reboot to do a comparison to, so I did decide to take my favorite of the series to cover today, which without a doubt is the first film from 1996, Scream. So as you guys know, we're going to go ahead and just discuss this a little bit at length. And how did you guys like this movie overall? Sound off in the comments below. Let's have a chat, shall we? So, 1996 Scream was written by Kevin Williamson, directed by the legend Wes Craven, and produced by Kathy Conrad and Carrie Woods. It was released December 20th of 1996. Was shot for a $14 to $15 million budget. There hasn't been a conclusive number there, but it did gross $173 million at the box office. If you were to adjust that for 2021 inflation, that would put it at about $285.3 million. So this is just an absolute success on all fronts. Not only that, it held a record until 2018 as being the highest grossing slasher film in theaters of motion picture history. That was knocked out in 2018 by the Halloween retcon, which is an absolutely awesome film, as we've already discussed previously, we'll get there. I promise you guys that. This movie was seen to have actually helped revitalize the horror genre as a whole, which in 96 was starting to have been seen as a pretty much dead genre as a whole, and that is due in part to the 1980s and even some of the late 70s, even where it started, really, but more so in the 80s, where we had a ton of direct-to-video B-movies, just a plethora of sequels for all of the main villains, like Jason, Freddy, Leatherface. Even Michael Myers had a handful during that time. So everyone and their mother had a sequel coming out over the course of multiple years. So Scream was seen to have revitalized the genre, which is great. And one thing that critics loved, and one thing that really stood out for me when I first started watching horror films, was the fact that Wes Craven intentionally took digs at all of the cliches and all the things that are known in horror films and just kind of put them on blast, and gave us the rules that Jamie Kennedy has been known to have given to us in the film, which we'll get to here in a moment. On top of an awesome concept of a film, he came out of the gate swinging with an absolute all-star cast. He had David Arquette, Neve Campbell, Courtney Cox while she was doing Friends, Matthew Lillard, Rose McGowan, Skeet Ulrich, Drew Barrymore. He had the Fonz as well, like Henry Winkler, like it's absolute killer cast, no pun intended, kinda sorta. It's a slasher movie. So he came into this thing out of the gate, just fresh concept, memorable, known faces, and that's really what helped its success in the box office. And then once people saw it, just helped revitalize the genre. So thank you, Wes Craven, for saving horror in the 90s. We don't know what we would do without you, man. So the film itself is based off of the Gainesville Ripper murders, which we covered on Tuesday during Slashathon. If you have not checked that out, please make sure to go and do so and place a vote while you're at it. Hint, hint. This film saw a ton of censorship issues when it went to the MPAA, which I'll touch base on here momentarily. It also has a lot of controversy behind it because not only is it inspired by a set of murders, it ended up influencing multiple other murders. So I'll briefly touch base on that as well. This film also had something going for it that was a little unorthodox, and that being they took the highest grossing and most known actress of the cast with Drew Barrymore, and they killed her off 12 minutes into the film. She's on the movie case. She was definitely the face for the film itself. She initially went into it wanting to play the role of Sidney Prescott and whatnot. I believe there was some scheduling conflicts during the time in which, and also they opted to have Neve Campbell, which at the end of the day was an absolutely awesome choice. It's completely unorthodox from how a film should be going. That's what got people in the doors and in seats at the end of the day, though. So yes, as I mentioned, 12 minutes in is when Drew Barrymore's character, Casey Becker, is killed. Her boyfriend is killed 4 minutes prior to that. So how the movie starts off is she receives a phone call asking what her favorite scary movie is. And then the person on the phone is no longer being kind of flirty and fun. They have intentions of harming her and decide to put her through a questionnaire to have her boyfriend live, who is now bound, taped to a chair in her over by her pool in the backyard. Asks a whole set of questions. She fails, which she totally did. Who didn't know Jason wasn't the killer in Friday the 13th? The first one. Come on now. You claimed you liked horror movies. But, so Steven gets disemboweled in the beginning. Then she ends up getting killed, hung from a tree, and her parents come home and find her. I remember that scene specifically stood out for me when I was younger. When I first saw that, kind of scared me to see the film initially. I was much younger at the time, so when I heard about this, I was like, yeah, no, maybe. But moving on, news media is covering the murder that just happened in town. We're about a year off from Sidney Prescott's mother being killed locally. Sidney Prescott is Neve Campbell's character. So she's seen a lot of things on the news regarding the anniversary of her mother's death, seeing the deaths of these two classmates. She ends up getting attacked at her house by the killer, but not actually killed. While she's waiting to go to her friend's house, her boyfriend ends up hopping through the window, Billy, and drops a cell phone. She thinks it's him that was making the phone calls and inevitably came after her. He gets taken away by the police. She ends up staying at her friend's house, where then she gets another threatening call. And then we get some of the quirky David Arquette humor with picking up the phone and, who is this? After the phone call's over. So it was nice to have that comedy amidst the horror side of things. So then we just moved on down. Billy gets released from being in prison. So then they start thinking that Neil Prescott, Sidney's father, is the one that's doing all the kills, because now the calls that were made to Sidney at her friend's house and to her home was traced to his cell phone. So now everyone's looking for him. Killer ends up killing, Principal Henry. The Fonz. Hey! I died in a movie. That spurs a whole curfew locally. Everyone needs to be home by this time. School's shut down. People find out later on in the film that, his body's been posed. And we're going to go check it out. And that's how they draw people out of the party. That ends up happening here not too long, giving us one of the longest finales in horror history as well. The entire party reveal of the killers, the whole 9 years, was over 40 minutes. So a lot of the premise of the film based on the finale of the film. Absolutely crazy. Not going to continue to go too much into the plot, because if you have seen it, you've seen it. And if you haven't, go check it out. But we end up getting to the end of the film, or towards the end of the film, I should say, where Jamie Kennedy's character is Randy, and he gives us the rules of how to survive a horror movie. Absolutely classic scene, and also dissected and just put on blast all of the cliches and all of the things that horror is known for, and inevitably spurs that into the sequels moving forward, where the rules change because it's a sequel and so forth. It was absolutely awesome. So we get to the final reveal of the film, absolute classic, where yes, it is Billy Loomis that did all the kills, but not just him. He's got his buddy Stu alongside, and he peer pressured Stu into this. So it was kind of sad for a moment, but you can't really take too much pity, man, because you still did it. Whether you didn't want to or not, you still did it. Peer pressure, man. Come on. But we got some awesome classic film quotes thrown in the mix, like when the reveal happens, Skeet Ulrich turns around and goes, "We all go a little mad sometimes," and ends up shooting Randy during this process. The whole thing is to make it look like that Neil Prescott is out to kill everybody and made a revenge. Because Billy Loomis, his father had an affair with Sidney's mother. So they end up, they tell Sidney, yeah, we're the ones that actually killed your mother and whatnot a year prior. It's because your mother and my father were having an affair and my mother left because of this. So now we're going to make it look like your father has gone off the deep end a year later and is killing everyone. So they go about trying to make it look like they're, they end up stabbing each other, attempting to shoot each other. Crazy stuff going on. But we end up getting it to be where Stu dies. And I'm doing this lightly because there's been speculation that I'm going to get into here in a moment. And then they end up shooting Billy in the head. Sidney does. Kills him off. And then we end the film shortly thereafter. So the movie is absolute classic, total joy to watch as far as being a horror fan is concerned, because you get the satire side of things, poking fun at the things that we love about horror, but at the same time we got a brand new killer and something to love long term. And there was also some amazing cameos throughout the film as well. Linda Blair pops in momentarily as a news reporter. Wes Craven plays the janitor, Fred, but he's in the hat and the sweater reminiscent of Freddy Krueger. Just so many cool things going on in this movie. It was absolutely good. Originally it was actually called Scary Movie as well, funny enough. They changed the title and then we ended up getting Scary Movie, which then poked fun at the movie, poking fun at everybody else. So we just get this giant cyclical thing going on here. But the film itself, when it came to the MPAA side of things, heavily censored. At first, there was a lot of issues going on with it. Wes Craven had to actually go in and lie about some of the film not being able to be edited due to it being the one shot, which was not the case necessarily, but he was really pushing for this film to be a certain way. Because when they got their initial rating from the MPAA, it was rated NC-17, which is considered box office suicide to some degree. And also the producers felt that some of the cuts would remove key elements from the film, reduce the quality of the film long term. So then Wes Craven went ahead, lied, stated that there was only one take of it and he couldn't replace something with a less intense kill, and that was the intensity of Drew Barrymore's kill in the intro. So the score is done by Marco Beltrami. This guy has done a ton of films. Not only has he scored all 4 of the Scream films for Wes Craven, he's done films like The Faculty, Mimic, the original Resident Evil, World War Z. Look at this guy's resume. He's done some absolutely amazing scores. This one got a lot of high praise as far as the score was concerned from critics, as it being memorable and a fresh score. This thing had a lot of fresh going on for it. Even on Rotten Tomatoes, speaking of fresh, it holds a 79% approval rating based off 75 reviews. But the movie itself did absolutely phenomenal at the box office, as we previously mentioned, with the adjusted inflation for 2021 is at $285.3 million. As I also said, it was the highest grossing slasher film of all time until 2018, when it finally got beat out by the Halloween retcon. The film itself won a ton of awards following that as well, and it won Best Film at the International Horror Guild in 1996. It won Best Movie for the MTV Movie Awards. There was a ton of nominations and a ton of wins. So this movie was just a slam dunk, home run, whatever analogy you want to go with. This movie had it. And clearly I'm a fan. So the film was released on home video July 2nd, 1997, as well as Laserdisc. This thing has seen a ton of re-releases, remastered definition cuts, you name it. Most notably in March 29th of 2011, about 2 weeks prior to the Scream 4 release, we got the Blu-ray cut that had everything that was released prior to and some. So as of right now, that one being a huge collector's item for some. One thing I did appreciate about this movie was the use of some of the classic music that was seen in and paying homage to the horror films that Kevin Williamson stated to love. Don't Fear the Reaper had an appearance in there at one point in time, as well as School's Out from Alice Cooper. Though the original songs were used in the film, they actually opted to put covers of those songs on the soundtrack when it was released. So I thought that was really interesting that they took that into consideration when putting the music to the movie itself. So where is Ghostface as the identity now? So currently we have 3 sequels. Scream 2, which was a year right after the first one was released in 1997. Then we had Scream 3 in 2000, and then Scream 4 in 2011, celebrating 15 years of Scream being on screen. Ghostface has also become a video game character, most notably in Dead by Daylight. They took just the identity side of things, and again, this is something I really appreciated about this game series as a whole, is that they take the character and put their own spin on it. And in this case, it's no different. They take Ghostface as the identity and give it a whole new story. And this one revolves around a news reporter covering murders in Gainesville, then enacting them at night, almost like a Dexter type of thing. So I thought that was really cool, and also adds to the geekiness of that video game as it is. Again, I said I'm not here to plug video games exclusively, but I am. Sponsor me. So as I stated in the beginning, this series has caused a lot of controversy, most notably the first film in particular. It caused a lot of copycat murders. So it's based off of actual murders, and then there's copycats of those murders. So it was just kind of, fiction based off of reality, then making more reality. Kind of messed up either way. But yeah, January 1998, a 16-year-old and his 14-year-old cousin stabbed their mother 45 times, killing her, and it was known as the Scream murder. And it fell under a lot of scrutiny through the media because they claimed that they were inspired by Scream 1 and 2. And that's why they went by and did it. The murder there's a whole lot of information behind it if you want to take a look at it, but during that time got a lot of child psychologists out, and we started to see a lot of the arguments that we had seen in the 80s as far as censorship and horror and its effects on youth. So we were starting to see history repeat itself in a sense again. January 17th of 1999, a 13-year-old was stabbed multiple times in the head and back before being left for dead by their friends. Again, cite Scream, and they were known as the Scream attackers. In May 4th, 1999, they stated that some of the Columbine massacre they were influenced by this as well. And then finally, in June of 2002, on the 3rd, a 17-year-old boy lured his 15-year-old friend out of the house, stabbed her 42 times wearing the mask. He stated to police when he was caught that he wanted to kill someone to emulate the character. So this film has caused a ton of copycat controversy through its release as well. On the award side of things, not only did that first film, as we had just covered, win a ton of awards, as a whole, it continues to win awards, even years after its release. In 2001, it made the list of AFI's 100 Years, 100 Thrills. In 2003, again with AFI's 100 Years, 100 Heroes and Villains list. In 2004, it got Bravo's 100 Years, 100 Scariest Movie Moments with the opening sequence. That one did not settle well even many years later. 2005 made 100 years, 100 movie quotes with AFI again, with Do You Like Scary Movies? And then it, in 2008, won 3 awards, won Empire's 500 Greatest Movies of All Time, Entertainment Weekly's both 50 best high school movies and 100 best films of the last 13 years. So these films continue to just have a great reputation. And then also we, as I mentioned as well, in 2011 with the last film for Wes Craven. So he gave us the franchise and he ended with it. In 2022, we are expected to see a 5th installment of this series. So far, we've got David Arquette on board, as well as Neve Campbell to this point. More information for that film is being done. They're going to be going into production here fairly soon, from what I've been reading on it. And I'm curious to see where they're going to go with this, because we've gotten the cousin, the brother, the boyfriend's mother. We've gotten everybody. Who else could possibly want to kill Sydney, except for maybe her father? So maybe we're going to see what initially Billy Loomis attempted to do in 1996 happen in 2022. I guess we'll see, right? If you guys haven't already, please make sure to get in your last minute votes for our Ghostface and Gainesville Ripper episode. I'll be announcing the winner for that on Tuesday for our next one. As I stated in the last episode, our next episode is covering Michael Myers and the Night Stalker Richard Ramirez. This one's a lot more personal for me because Michael Myers is my absolute favorite slasher and horror villain of all time. So this is going to be a huge moment for me. We're going to have a disgustingly good time as we always do. So until then, scare you later, YouTube.